I usually fill this time with a bit of nonsense, and today I'm going to fill it with. I've realised earlier today that I've worn the same t-shirt that I wore last week. So these are. I just want to reassure everyone that's listening. These are genuinely live, and if you want to check that, if you go back to the last one, you'll see this microphone was not in the last one. So I knew I sounded a bit tinny in the last one. So I've gone and got myself a new microphone. And we are live, so we're good to go. The other thing I've noticed is over time, this is going to serve as a method of me looking back and seeing how much I've aged, isn't it? I'm going to be able to just keep going back and seeing how much older I look each time.
Absolutely. Those grey hairs will be coming out more, won't they?
Yeah, I'll be Santa by Christmas, I think. So I'll start off by just a little bit about how we met. So Alex and I both met through work, I think is fair to say, Alex.
Yeah.
Alex is a brilliant educator, in my opinion. I'm not trying to embarrass him. And he's done some work with a company that we also work with called Focus Education. We met through that. And Alex is building his brand, founder of a new business. How old, Alex? New Education Outlook.
I guess officially it's since September, so it's about 6 months really. So it's still fairly new. Yeah.
So building your brand. So hopefully this will help with that. And just generally interested in the same stuff that we're interested in. But without me going on about how we met for too much longer, do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So I've been in primary teaching for around 15 years. I was most recently working as part of a senior leadership team at an outstanding school in Oldham. And I was there for about 2.5 years. I was assistant head there. And kind of made the decision that I wanted to do something slightly different. I really enjoyed working with other staff members. Obviously, I love teaching children. That's the best part of the job. But I really, really enjoy seeing other people do well and supporting others with developments that they want to do. So that's led me to starting up what I'm starting at. Well, what I've been starting up for the last 6 months. Looking at curriculum development, hopefully supporting schools with developing specific subjects. I'm a big fan of history, which if you followed me at all, you'll see a lot of my posts are relate to history and geography and humanities. But I'm a big fan of the wider curriculum. Full stop. I think it's really important. And I've done a lot of work with Focus, which kind of led me to decide to do this. I think if it wasn't for the links I had with Focus, I probably wouldn't be sat here talking to you now about all this stuff. But yeah,
Focus are great. Like what Focus do. I've seen some of the sessions that you do on the curriculum stuff as well. Really like that. If anyone's looking at curriculum related stuff, drop Alex a message or a connection request on LinkedIn.
Definitely.
Have a look at what Focus are doing. They're doing some really good stuff that's really cost effective as well, in my opinion. I should have said right at the start, if anyone's got any questions throughout, if you comment with questions, they'll pop up on my screen, so we can answer them as we go along. I think you can see them as well, Alex, so we'll just answer as we go along. So first question I've got is, I ask everyone the same sort of question, and I know you're going to be more the ed side of stuff, but why ed and tech? So what made you take this route, and what keeps you here?
I'll start with the why, I guess, and the what led me here. As I sort of touched on, I was ready for something different. I've done a lot of work with teachers in schools I've worked in, but I kind of wanted to have a broader impact. But there's another side to it as well, in that I felt like my wife is a head teacher as well. So I felt like we were both in the midst of that kind of SLT intensity, working in primary schools. We've got 2 young daughters. They were, spending a lot of time in wraparound care, not much family around to support us with that, which wasn't fair on our 2 girls. And I just sort of sat down towards the end of last year with my wife and sort of said, we need to do something different here. Something's not working. And, I had a chat with Focus, actually. I had a chat with Claire at Focus and sat down with her and said, because they're always asking me to do things while I was working in schools. And I was always sort of batting it away, being like, I'd love to, but I just don't have time. I don't have the energy. When I sat down with Claire, she was very much like, we could do this, you could do that. And that made me feel really excited. So that's kind of why I ended up sort of making that decision. Something I've made a few notes, because I just want to make sure that I say the things that I want to say. But one of the things I've written down here is my wife sometimes says to people that we were both in senior leadership, and people quote back us. I don't know what the statistic is, but apparently there's a statistic for divorce if both members of a married couple are in SLT. And for the sake of our relationship, I felt like it was important that one of us made some sort of decision to do something slightly different. So that was a part of it too. But yeah, I love research. I love writing. One of the first things I did for Focus was I wrote something, a publication about teaching Black British history as part of the curriculum.
Yeah.
And what I loved about that was initially I knew very little, and I felt, I was quite sad about that, because we need to know more about it. It's a really important topic. But what I loved about that was the learning I did while I was researching it, and putting that together. It took a long time, because I was doing it at weekends, while I was teaching in the week. But it took a long time, but it was a great. I felt a real sense of achievement when I put that together, and then that led to me sort of delivering training on that with people I was working with, or through Focus. So when I came to make this decision, I knew it was something that was feasible. I just needed to put the work in to make it happen. And I feel like, 6 months down the line, I'm getting the sort of the fruits of that
Yeah.
labor. People are starting to come to me, and I'm having some really good meetings with people about, how I can support them and things like that. I've done a free webinar session on developing a history curriculum, which again, I know you like to put things in the links in the comments in the links in the comments. I'm getting my words all jumbled. Links in the comments. So I can give you the link for that, and people can have a watch of that.
100%.
And then the other thing that kind of led me here is the influences that I had. So there are people that I've met on my journey. So there was a curriculum consultant, a lady called Dawn Robertson, who I admire massively. She's probably been doing something, my sort of role, but for like 20 odd years, maybe longer. And she came to my school in like my second or third year of teaching, and she just encouraged me to take risks and with my teaching. And that sounds really strange to say that as a teacher, but I don't think there's enough of that in education. I think we need to take more risks with what we do to get better outcomes for the children.
I definitely agree with that. I think sometimes in life in general, actually, um, but in particular in education, I don't think we're
Yeah,
encouraged to take, both kids and teachers and senior leaders to a certain extent. We're not
yeah,
empowered or encouraged to take risks. I've taken a lot of risks in my career. So although I've worked in education, I worked in a school for 5 years, but not in a teaching role.
yeah,
And going back to your first answer, it's one of the saddest things, I think, when I look at education. Those that have been in it or around it understand how much work's involved, but those that are removed from it, other than their children going to school or some people not having children, they don't understand. Not everyone, but the vast majority don't understand just how much work's involved. The good old,
it's
well,
the
you get 14
intensity
weeks a
of it.
year off and all that rubbish and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, it's the intensity of it, I think, that people underestimate. And I'm not saying that there aren't other jobs that have the same or more intensity, but that term time intensity is it's go, go, go. As a classroom teacher, constant, as a senior leader, often, especially in a primary school, in a small primary school, you're a senior leader, but you're in class all the time. And that's kind of where I found myself. And that was where I'm not going to lie, I struggled. I think that's fair to say, not because I couldn't do it,
Yeah,
but it was hard. It was hard work, and I did it for as long as I could with both of us being there. But it was a challenge. But what going on to what keeps me doing what I'm doing, and I know I've only done it for a short time, so it's perhaps a funny question to answer, but actually I do like being in education. It is for the children. I've got two of my own children.
yeah,
I'm very passionate. I love talking to them about things they learn at school, and they blow me away with some of the stuff. So I know that what they're getting at their school is good stuff. But I think if we can support adults better to feel like it's less intense and take away some of the obstacles for them, then they can do a better job in the classroom. And actually, when they feel like they're doing that, they will be more encouraged to do the things that I want to work on for my business, but for themselves within schools, they'll start thinking in that way too. And I just think in education, it's massively important that we just all support each other, and that's
yeah,
what I want to do in essence.
yeah.
So yeah,
So if you're an educator listening and you need some support, put your hand up and let
Even
Alex
a
know.
shoulder to cry on every now and again. You know, we all need it. I've shed many tears. I'm not afraid to admit it. I've shed many tears, and for lots of different reasons, in lots of
Yeah,
different situations. Not always anyone's fault specifically. Just it's a tough, intense job, and
yeah,
you know, if you're still doing it, I'm doing bits of it. I do some supply teaching while I'm starting things up. So you know, I'm still sort of there. But if you're doing it day in, day out, then I've massive respect to people who are still doing it.
yeah, the
It's
same here. 100%, 100%. So, do you have any regrets along the way, and not necessarily about your current situation, but like over your whole career in education? Anything that jumps out as a regret?
um I don't think I regret anything. I think that from a very early point in my career, I went through some very challenging situations in the schools that I taught. And if you teach in Oldham or if you know Oldham, then you'll know that there are lots of areas of massive deprivation. There are lots of really difficult areas to work in terms of teaching the children for there's lots of external factors to it. Um, and I think I don't have any regrets, but I look back and I think, oh, I'd have done things differently if I knew what. I think most people feel this way. When you look back, if I knew what I know now, if I'd known that then, especially in my NQT year, it was bonkers. There were kids there that I was not prepared to manage properly, and you know there were issues that they had, and I'm not going to go into them because that's not professional, but there were things there. When I look back, I could have supported them better. If I knew what I know now, I could have supported them a lot better.
If we park
But
that thought,
my
'cause
whole career's been
I might ask
sorry.
you if we park the what you know now, if you knew it then, because I'll ask you that in a bit. So
Yeah, well, yeah, no, that's fine. But I just think that we want the best for children. I think it's been a massive learning curve, my career. And I eventually felt like I got to where I wanted to a point, and then felt like, do you know what? This is what I thought I wanted, but now I want
mm,
something else, which is what I'm doing now.
yeah.
So no regrets. I think there were lots of opportunities for learning along the way. That's how I put it, I think.
So these are linked then. So this is usually where we tease out some interesting stuff for people who are listening. So what advice would you give to any educator? And I'm avoiding the word teacher, but any educator trying to implement something new in the classroom. So that could be tech or not. Anything new in the classroom. What advice would you give them?
I think the biggest thing is what I sort of touched on earlier when I talked about Dawn and taking risks. The thing that helped me to become a better teacher was when someone, in this case it was Dawn, said to me, "Why don't you try that? You know, why don't you give it a go and see what happens?" And the worst thing that's going to happen is it'll be a rubbish lesson. And if you follow people who are in teaching who are honest, one of the people who loads of people follow this guy, ICT Mr. P. I don't
Yeah,
know him personally, but I watch some of his video clips, and all the time he's dead honest. He's like, sometimes that lesson, I taught that lesson, and it was rubbish. But
yeah,
I made sure that the next day I did this, and it was tons better. And I think that's what risk taking is about. When we talk to children, I'm not saying we want them to make mistakes all the time, but we encourage them not to be afraid of making mistakes.
yeah,
I don't feel like we're the same towards adults. I feel like the intensity and the expectation on adults is that we are, as educators, perfect all the time. And I think and that's not everyone. It's a massive generalization. You know, I've worked for some people who are willing me to do the things I want to do. I'm not, I'm not taking away from that. But if I was giving advice to someone starting out and wanting to change something in their classroom, I'd say don't be afraid to take those risks. Don't be afraid to try something new. Talk to someone about it first, maybe. Talk to
yeah,
someone who's your line manager and just say, well, what do you think about this? They might have ideas for how you could implement it and make sure it works. But without trying things, we're never gonna develop, and you won't get everything right. That's the other thing. I've got so many things wrong in my career at various different points in various different ways. I've had lesson observations where people have turned around and said, "Wow, that was outstanding." I've had lesson observations where people are like, "Honestly, what happened to you today? Where have you gone?" And it's gut wrenching to have that at that time. But you look back on it, and you think, well, it was just a bad day. It was a snapshot. I tried something, it didn't work out. maybe a lesson observation wasn't the best time to try something new, because that's, that I've learned that the hard way a few times. But yeah, I think don't be afraid to take risks, but also make sure, or as best you can, try and be in a workplace that encourages you to do that, that encourages you to
Definitely.
try things out, because that's where you can start to feel stifled. And I've had a mixed bag with the places I've worked. There've been some places where I felt really encouraged and really trusted, and yeah, we want you to do this, and really respected. And then sometimes in the same place, there can be an odd moment where they've felt the other way about me, and then there's all sorts of discussions around that. But be in a place where you feel comfortable and confident
Yeah.
to take those risks and try things out, basically.
You mentioned the people, and I can't remember who said this, and it might be someone famous, it might be somebody who's been influential in my career, but I can remember somebody once saying, don't choose a job, choose a boss. And I can honestly say throughout my career, I've not chosen every boss that I've worked for, but there's 100% correlation between how happy I was in my role and how successful I was, and whether I chose the boss or not. So those scenarios where I didn't choose the person who I was working for, they were the more challenging roles I've had, 100%. And the roles that had the most impact on my life in a negative way. So I like that, really like that.
No, absolutely.
So you stepped out of the classroom, and I guess you're not 100% removed from it because you're still working in that education space. But what, if any, advice would you give to an educator who's trying to start a career in a different space or outside of the classroom? Is there anything you've learned in the last 6 months that you go, you need to think about this?
Tom's going to hate me here, but I'm going to go back to our first meeting when I met you, Dave, and Tom. And I think Tom arrived a little bit late, and that did bother me too. I'm not saying it because
he's always late.
I figured it's usually me that's late to things, so it's fine. One of the things he said was, "What's your plan?" And I remember sort of looking at the three of you and thinking, so, and sort of cobbled something. I don't even remember what I said. Something to do with focus, something to do with writing blogs. I don't know. But my advice would be two things. One would be have a plan for what you want to do, and from being on LinkedIn, that's emphasized that to me, because I've seen other people often talk about career pivots and things like that, and having some, a bit of money saved up, or an idea about actually where you want to be at certain points, even if it's only roughly. Have a plan for what you want to do, because in all honesty, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but I didn't really have an idea how I was going about getting there. So yeah, that's one thing. And then the second thing would be to sort of have patience. I currently do supply teaching because I've got to pay the bills, and I'm building up my business. And like you say, I'm building up my brand, and I'm developing links with other people. I think I mentioned to you off the live that I'd had some interesting meetings today of some things that I'm doing moving forward, which is brilliant now. But at the start of the things, it won't be like that. It isn't like that, and you have to work really hard to build up your network online, to build up your network of people that use links that you have. A big source of things for me has been people that I've worked with, speaking to them and saying, can I come and do this for you? And would, what about this? And people taking you up on that offer, or saying, I can't, but such and such can, and things like that. So yeah, my two things: one, have a plan, and two, be patient. That's what I would say.
Do you follow Gary Vaynerchuk at all?
No, I don't know.
Worth following Gary Vaynerchuk. He's in marketing, social media in particular. He talks an awful lot about patience and how important patience is. So you'll see loads of stuff where people are saying to him, look, I'm 40 and I'm in this job and I need to earn this amount of money and stuff. And he's like, get away. You're 40. You see people who start businesses at 60, 70, 80, but you've just got to be patient, sort of thing. Really worth, if you invest in the concept of patience, worth looking at some of his stuff, definitely. So third one around advice. What advice would Alex of today give Alex right back at the start?
By start, do you mean start of the last 6 months, or?
I'd say start of your career, because 6 months is a short period of time. But if you've got something that is over the last 6 months, feel free. Um,
Well, I'll do both. The last 6 months, I would say I would tell myself to be more confident in myself. I know that Thomas talked about self-confidence last week.
yeah,
I agree with him completely. In terms of what I'm doing now, I've taught for 15 years. I know what I'm talking about. I just need to make sure that I believe in myself, and I think most people would say that I'm fairly self-confident, but they don't actually know what's going on in my head, and that's for me to manage. But
yeah,
I need to be more, being more confident about what you're doing because I know what I'm doing. And then in terms of the start of my career, I'd probably warn myself that it was going to be a bit of a roller coaster ride and be prepared for that. Even just my first year was there were some insane things that I experienced that I just as a 21, 22 year old was just not fully prepared for. And I
yeah,
don't think any level of training can prepare you for that. It stood me in good stead for when I moved through. But yeah, I think teaching is a roller coaster for lots of reasons. One, because of the changing nature of the children and the cohorts you teach.
yeah,
Two, because of the changing nature of the different schools you work in and the different people that you'll work with. There are lots of variables, and just be prepared that it won't be plain sailing all of the time. I don't think anything is, but in teaching in particular, things are so changeable. Yeah, be prepared for that.
I always find that interesting when we talk about change in education, and because of the nature of people who work in education, so they're all about the greater good and serving the community and serving children and stuff. The answer is always around when you're talking about change, is around how context can change, how
Mm.
certain things uh, outside of the classroom can change. Very rarely do people talk about the type of change that comes about from something as politically charged as education. And I don't for 1 minute suggest that we ever get in a political debate on LinkedIn, but
No, probably
it's
not a good
such a
idea.
highly politically charged and high stakes accountability role, um, that things can change every 5 years. And nobody
Yeah,
ever really, I know people consider it, but it's not the first thing that comes to mind. They always think about the kids. Who else they work
yeah,
with? The people. They always think about the
yeah.
people. But the change that you can't affect, um, is probably one of the biggest factors as well. I mean, it impacts
There are
so much.
so many things that teachers in the classroom don't actually have control over,
Mm,
and that might be as high up as politics. It might be as low down as, a child has had some really bad family issue and they've come in and
yeah,
they're just not in the right state of mind. It's that range of
yeah,
challenges. And like you said earlier, unless you're in it, I think some people struggle to grasp what that actually means.
yeah,
I didn't before I was a teacher, and I know I was young as a 21, 22 year old. I was completely naive to it. So if I hadn't gone into teaching, I'd still be sitting here now being completely naive to it, I think.
yeah,
So yeah.
yeah, definitely. So I'll wrap up with two quick fire questions. The first one is, what's the best bit of, I don't want to use the word ed tech, um, the best resource that you've seen in the classroom and why? And the second one is book or podcast recommendation. I usually say one, but everyone who's been on this so far has chosen two.
Those two.
So,
Yeah.
have three, four, whatever you want.
Okay, well, I'll start with the ed tech that isn't necessarily tech, but it is an online-based thing. And you probably won't be surprised when I talk about this, but I'm doing a lot of work with Focus's Learning Challenge curriculum.
Yeah,
It's a curriculum that, by very design, it's designed to support teachers. It provides that progression of learning. It makes links to prior learning. There are all sorts of resources in there, retrieval activities, low stakes assessment type quizzes. It's designed by Clive Davis, and he started this sort of, I'm sure it's 14, 15 years ago, but it's changed and developed so much since he first started it.
yeah,
And I didn't sort of talk about him earlier. Actually, he was a big inspiration for me to do this about 5 or 6 years ago when I first met him. He's a big reason why I'm able to sit here because he's who linked me to Focus with the writing side of things. But yeah, the Learning Challenge curriculum it's a really great curriculum. So I'm working much more closely over the coming months and stuff with Claire at Focus and Clive at Focus to develop that even further. So if
Nice.
people want to know about that, I can, you know, you can arrange a meeting with me, and I'm happy to talk. I could talk to you all day about it. Probably I won't now, but yeah, that's kind of my useful resource.
Yeah.
And then in terms of books and podcasts, I actually am going to be on another podcast, so I thought I'd mention that one. It's called Stories of School Leadership by a lady called Emma Lurie, and again, it's testament to LinkedIn and the networking that you can do. I randomly saw a post by her. She was looking for people who'd been involved in school leadership, and I made contact. I said, you know, if you think I'm the sort of person, I'd love to be involved. And yeah, I've got a meeting booked in with her, I think in March, to talk about that and discuss that. So, but the reason I bring it up is because actually I've listened to the first few episodes, and it's really interesting listening to the different types of leaders. She had Vivian Porritt, who is a huge part of Women Ed on one of our last episodes, and that was really interesting to listen to her experiences and things like that. It was really inspiring. So yeah, and then I'm going a little bit outside the box with books, because I'm sure lots of people will sort of go for a book that's maybe like, you know, this is how you teach this, or this is how you change your life, or whatever. But I'm a primary school teacher, so I thought I'd go with something that I think is really useful for children and primary school teachers alike. So it's actually a range of books. These ones are called History and Infographics. There's one about the Vikings, one about the Stone Age. There's one about the Mayans. There's a whole range of them. It goes into science as well. And the reason I love them is because, you know, it's really pictorial. The way it sort of shows you all the information from a teaching point of view. It just gives you what you need on a double page spread. This one's about sort of the different structures in the Mayan times. I won't bore you with all the pages, but for me, it's a fantastic. They are a fantastic resource for teachers who want to teach history, or the other range is science. I think there's loads of them, but from a subject knowledge point of view. But when I've used them in the classroom, children just love. They'll spend all day just looking through it, and it, you know, in the middle of lessons, if you're learning about a specific aspect of a topic, they've got that double page there. They've got the reference point that they need to be really successful with their learning. Really visual, really supports their understanding of new vocabulary and things like that. So yeah, that's my book recommendation as well.
Nice. They look really engaging. I don't want to give my age away, but when you said books that are in the classroom, like nearly all of me thought this is going to be Biff and Chip. So I don't know. Are they still around? I don't know if they're still around.
They are still around. I'm
Nice.
not the hugest fan of them, but you know, they've got a place. Everything has a place. It's all about how you use it, and how you know, make best use of it for the children. So, you know, I'm all for, if someone can tell me, no, there's a use for this, then I'm all for that. If it works, it works.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'll get the links for the podcast and for the books off you, and I'll put them in the comments. So final thing, tell everyone where they can find you, because I'm sure people will listen to this. Nice to have an education perspective, one that's not tipped towards tech. So people will listen. Where's the best place for people to find you?
So I try my best to be across all social media platforms that I can, but I do a lot of time on LinkedIn. I'm quite active on Twitter when I can be as well. I do have Instagram and Facebook accounts, but I don't spend quite as much time there. So yeah, LinkedIn and Twitter is probably the best place. And I've got a website as well. It's literally www.neweducationoutlook.co.uk. There's contact forms on there if you want to contact me directly. But yeah, that's me.
Amazing. Well, thanks. I'm sure everyone's enjoyed that, and I'll touch
Thanks for
base with
having me.
you soon. Cheers,
Sounds
Alex.
great.
See you later.
Brilliant.